Thank you, George. The final presentation of the conference is a bit of a postscript, really, what George has said. She's introduced cover crops as a really important tool for helping soil health. But I just want to expand on soil health a little bit because it's a real basic fundamental which sometimes gets lost out. You've heard some really interesting and novel science today, but actually, let's not forget, soil health drives healthy crops. And that in itself is really important for approach to controlling pests and diseases and possibly weeds. I think most of you are aware that over the years we've been involved in developing a soil health scorecard. We were part of the AHDB project. We quickly recognised we couldn't use just one single characteristic to describe soil health. There was always taught that organic matter would do it, but clearly not. And effectively, the work over those number of years identified a suite of measurements measuring a different range of biology, chemistry, and soil physics. 8 or 9 categories, introducing some very new ones, such as what we call the Solvita test, which allows us to measure microbial respiration. So actually a good measure of your microbial activity of the soils. And we were able to categorise those scores in a red, amber, green in relation to some very extensive benchmarking. Thousands of soils were done, and the benchmarking was done against different soil types, different areas of the country. So it was really important, and it allowed us to look at our results and say where they were. So, for example, if you had red, you had soil health score which was actually quite low compared to the benchmark. So it gave you an indication that it's something you needed to investigate. And of course, you might have seen this slide last year at the conference. What we were able to do is actually look at soil health in relation to crop performance. And through initiatives such as the BYC, which is where we followed cohorts of commercial crops in a number of years, we were able to do that. And if you can see the graph there on the right, where we looked at the number of green categories and compared it to yield, you can clearly see as the soil fields with a higher number of categories, certainly once you get above 60% of all the different scores which are scoring green, you can see an increase in yield. So very clearly showed that soil health can be linked to increased yield and actually most importantly additional return, and that's based on £40 a tonne. But interesting, that's yield. But what about effect of soil health on plant diseases? So let's do a slightly similar exercise this time, but looking at it in relation to disease such as Cercospora. Now, Cercospora is a good disease to look at actually because actually it likes stressed plants. You might have noticed this in your own crops that sometimes you'll find the initial infection foci from plants which are a bit backwards and stressed, probably more so than rust and mildew. It really picks them out. But if you look again here, and again a similar kind of exercise, looking at a field with a high proportion of greens as opposed to one with fewer there, you can see as the proportion goes up, the proportion of plants with severe symptoms actually comes down. So a very tangible link there, which I don't think has actually been measured before, to show actually soil health improves, actual infection of diseases declines. It's kind of stating the obvious, and I think probably many of you will observe this, but actually it's really important to understand it, and it can be measured and quantified. So let's just look at a similar year when we know there was a lot of problems in the crop, because it helps demonstrate that and starts to point us in the direction of the things we need to think about. 2020, don't need to remind you. Again, we can look here where we had some crops, a number of crops which had organic manures applied or didn't. So it's a bit of a proxy, but so soils with fields with a healthier soil as opposed to ones which were less. There's a lot of assumptions in that statement, but if we just start looking at it, we had 30 crops and 63% of them had manures applied. First of all, the thing we can look at is the difference in plant population. A higher plant population where organic manures were applied. They're still good populations, and actually those kind of differences in terms of yield, probably not massively significant, but actually when we looked at the levels of virus, you can see that lower population was associated with quite a significantly higher level of plants showing virus symptoms. There's other interactions going on this, but it's just highlighting this trend. Alistair talked about and showed how aphids are attracted to different colours because they do have their visual receptors do look at different colours, but they're also very much drawn to a contrast between green and brown. and you'll often see this in fields. Sometimes you get an isolated plant, and you'll have a virus. And of course, when you have low plant populations, you're more likely to have more areas of exposed soil, either in patches or just across the field. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see those kind of effects. So again, reminding us of the importance to get good plant populations and how that can be driven by soil health, particularly the use of organic manures. Again, in this year, just reinforcing the data I perhaps showed you earlier. Again, when we look at Cercospora again, and you can see the cost of Cercospora here on the back of virus yellows, and I think what we saw in 2020 actually reminded us that actually that virus infection actually encouraged Cercospora, but also other kind of secondary pathogens such as Alternaria, which again come a secondary, they come in on the back of damage. Again, though, where organic manures were used, you can see there was severe symptoms where higher incidence of severe symptoms where no organic manures again. So the indications are then where organic manures were used, the soil was healthier, we were seeing less virus and less disease. So real tangible indications of the importance of soil health. And of course that would be linked to a yield reduction, but we have to remember in that year is quite a bad drought year as well, so there's many other factors interacting in these kind of monitoring exercises. So soil health, hopefully that convinces you that soil health is important, but actually it's not just soil health, actually understanding the component of soil health is really important. And if we look at some kind of grouped averages of fields over the years, you can see the ones, and I'm going to now focus on the ones where we're getting reds, because they're the ones which are suggesting we've got issues we need to investigate. And I think it's very interesting and quite concerning that maybe 20% of the fields were flagged red for pH, and that was low pH, so acidic, as opposed to the other end of the pH scale. So that's quite a high proportion. I'll come back to that a little bit later. But also, not surprisingly, we've got VEST score, which is a visual assessment of soil structure. Earthworms figured high with quite a low proportion of reds compared to, and also then the test of microbial activity. So it highlights key components of soil health, and this is important because it may steer us on the intervention we might want to take. To improve those might be slightly subtle interventions. So let's think about that soil health. We're going to be drilling our crops in the next month and a half. And I think it's going to be challenging because we're going to have some challenging soils out there. But it's really important to understand what kind of components of things we can improve. Now, many of these aren't quick fixes, so I'm not for one moment suggesting you go out there and start piling on organic manure. It has to be done in a measured way, in a planned way. But I will start with pH. I think it's such a basic for the crop. We know the crop doesn't like it. There's a difference just between pH 6 and pH 7. You can see the difference in seedling establishment. And of course, it can be associated with diseases such as blacklead symptoms, which tend to like more acidic soils, particularly when it's warm and wet, which might be the case this year. So certainly a focus on pH I think is really important. I think you know the intervention on that one. We don't need to talk about that. Again, the addition of organic manures, I think they can be very good conditioning the soil. We know to get those crops to establish quickly and then grow away, we need good seed to soil contact, and more importantly, good early root to soil contact to make sure it can extract water and obviously nutrients. That really drives that really quick growth. So getting those seed beds right, we know organic manures can really help with that, and cover crops as well can help with soil structure, really important. Tend to see the benefits over time rather than instant fixes, so be aware of that. And again, I think a watch out for this year, we could have some challenging seed beds. It is so important to get it right, to get those crops to go quickly. Our experience over the years, often crops drilled a little bit later, a week or two into better conditions, often do better than the ones which are drilled early into really poor conditions, particularly if it's dry and cloddy. Sometimes just a bit of time and patience, and that crop will go away. It will develop quicker, faster, and have less issues with disease as well. Of course, good soil biology, so if you are getting reds on your soil biology, to be able to improve soil biology, again, many of those actions are included in the use of organic manures and cover crops, but obviously that's really important for early nutrient development as well. lots of potential benefits. I think I haven't got time to go in those, but there's various other tools and tactics we can deploy. Fertiliser placement, by having that fertiliser placed close to the seed, we often see greater development of plants there, and that's obviously linked to that early nutrient availability. Have a range of seed treatments. Of course, we mustn't forget we have fungicides and insecticides on those, other than Cruiser, of course, and they are important as well. But we are increasingly seeing a range of novel technologies come in our seeds, such as the use of biostimulants, elicitors, and even nutrients as well. And we are monitoring those. We see some small and consistent effects, but it's a very interesting approach. The magnitude of those tend to reflect whether there's an abiotic stress on it, particularly in dry springs. We're seeing developments with soil-applied biology, again, to see if we can put biology into the soil to help crops get away. And some of the products we have looked at do often help promote early canopy, not always taken through to yield, but obviously we can see that effect there again. And of course then foliar nutrition and biostimulants, we just don't have to go into time with that. But again, when crops are stressed, they can possibly help. Again, if we go look at crop resilience to stress later in the season, again, making sure we've got good organic matter contact and we've got a strategy to improve it certainly helps the retention of moisture, which gives us drought resilience. Good earthworm activity really helps as well. So there's a lot of activity there. So again, be in no doubt that soil health can really help that, and we do seem to suffer from some quite severe droughts now. And often those healthier soils, how they recover from drought events or even frost events, you'll see that better in soils which are healthier. So a call to action really. What we want to do is really urge you to establish a program of soil health testing. You may want to just benchmark fields to see where you are. You can use a scorecard to do that because it's a great benchmarking tool. Or you might want to perhaps have a focus on some fields where you think you might have variation. This is just some crop biomass measurements made pre to harvest. You can see some big differences in fields, from more uniform ones to probably one which may suggest it might have been two separate fields that may have had different cropping. It's probably unlikely to be a soil type, but others which might be soil type. Remember, it's very difficult to change soil texture, so it's something we can attempt to do, so to be mindful of it. But having a look at maps that actually are reminding yourself where to do your soil testing is really important. And of course some kind of watch outs there, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with anyhow. And of course the soil health testing is, most of you are doing this anyhow. You're doing it regularly, and if you aren't doing soil or organic matter, I think I would really recommend you do it. You can get payment under SFI now to do that, and it's a really good measure. Just one, it's not the ultimate one. But also being prepared to go and do a what we call our spade test, probably 3 spade tests in a relatively small, discrete area, particularly if you're trying to understand why a crop isn't performing. It's really good. Looking at earthworm numbers, looking at your soil structure, which is a visual test, and then it's probably good to do your soil test here for Solvita, because it goes to a different lab, or you might be using your own test kits, which you can buy online. Lots of information on how to do it on our website, and if you are doing it and gathering data, you can go onto the AHDB website, and there's actually an Excel spreadsheet where you just put the results in and it will turn it into a red, green, amber for you, so you don't have to do that. That's quite a handy little thing to have. So anyhow, you can see when it comes to soil health, BBRO never sits down on the job. But what we'd like to suggest is you might be able to sit down on the job. A bit cryptic, isn't it? What we're offering is some free soil health checks, and effectively what we've taped under your chairs are a number, I think it's 3, isn't it? Opportunities to have probably a half-day session with the team from BBRO to come and do some soil health testing with you. We'll pick up all the soil health testing. Someone's already looking. James is quick off the mark. But what I encourage you now to do is have a look. If you have got an envelope under your seat, just hold it up, and what we do is we'll come and see you later, and we'll make sure we've got your details, and we'll arrange something. So I urge you to have a delve under your chairs now. There are quite a lot of empty chairs, so feel free to delve. Has anybody found one yet? All right, 2. Very good. We need one more. Must be one that side. You didn't put more on that side, did you? Keep delving. Do you know where you put them, Chaz? Okay, well, I don't want to delay any longer because we are very near and I do need to fit some questions in a final session. So, no, I mean, seriously, we believe it's a really useful approach. Not only does it drive crop performance, that underlying message of soil health is key part of your IPM strategy. It sits right at the bottom of that, the IPM triangle, of course.